I'm 32 years old, and I'm standing in the driveway watching my mother Barbara throw my bags onto the wet pavement while screaming that I'm a leech. My father Robert watches silently from the doorway. I've been managing the family's finances remotely for their construction business for 8 years while recovering from a workplace accident that left me with chronic pain. As rain soaks through my belongings, I pick up my bags without saying a word, knowing something my parents don't. Their entire financial empire runs through accounts only I control. I drove straight to my friend Marcus's apartment, my bags still dripping rainwater all over his hardwood floors. Marcus took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just pointed to the spare room he'd been using as an office. That's when everything started flooding back, all the years that led to this moment. 10 years ago, I was 22, fresh out of college with my finance degree from State University. I was so proud walking into Hartley Construction for my first real day of work. My dad had built that company from nothing, starting with just a pickup truck and a tool belt when he was 25. By the time I joined, he had 12 employees and steady contracts all over the county. I remember my first day clearly. Robert took me around the job sites, introducing me as his son who was going to modernize the business. I spent my days learning everything from foundation work to finished carpentry, but my evenings were dedicated to the office, trying to make sense of the chaos that was their bookkeeping. Everything was still on paper, stuffed into boxes with no real system. My mother Barbara handled what she called the books, which mostly meant writing checks and hoping there was money in the account to cover them. 2 years into working there, everything changed. We were renovating a medical building downtown, a big contract that would set us up for the whole year. I was up on the scaffolding checking measurements when the whole structure shifted. The bolts were rusted through. Equipment my father had been meaning to replace for 3 years but kept putting off to save money. I fell 22 feet onto concrete. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. 3 vertebrae fractured, nerve damage that would never fully heal, and chronic pain that would become my constant companion. I spent 4 months in the hospital in rehabilitation, learning to walk again while taking enough painkillers to knock out a horse. But even flat on my back, barely able to sit up, my mind was still sharp. That's when I discovered the real state of Hartley Construction. My mother brought me the mail to keep me busy, and I started seeing late notices, tax warnings, angry letters from suppliers. I asked her to bring me all the financial records. What I found made my stomach turn even through the medication haze. They owed the IRS $90,000 in back taxes. They had no system for accounts receivable, with over $200,000 in uncollected payments just sitting out there. 3 major contracts were bleeding money because no one had read the fine print about material cost adjustments. While I was bedridden in my childhood room, I quietly took control. I called the IRS and negotiated a payment plan, explaining about the accident and taking responsibility as the new financial manager. I set up QuickBooks on my laptop, entering 3 years of backdated transactions while my mother brought me soup and complained about me being home all day. I tracked down every unpaid invoice, called every client, and recovered $160,000 in 90 days. I restructured everything into 3 LLCs for tax purposes, moved all our banking online, and negotiated new terms with every supplier. I got us proper insurance, including the liability coverage we'd been skating without for years. My parents never bothered learning the new systems. They just knew that suddenly, there was always money in the account, bills were paid on time, and profits were up 40% within a year. But here's what killed me slowly. The better I made things, the less they saw what I did. My younger brother Nathan had become a lawyer up in Boston, working for some fancy firm downtown. He'd visit maybe twice a year, always in his expensive suits, talking about his big cases. My mother would light up like a Christmas tree, bragging to everyone about her successful lawyer son. My sister Emma became a nurse, married a doctor named James, and moved to the nice part of town. She had 2 kids and the perfect suburban life. When she visited, my mother would go on and on about what a wonderful mother Emma was, how accomplished, how she really made something of herself. And then, there was me. The son living in his childhood bedroom, working on a laptop all day. Never mind that I was managing $3 million in annual revenue, handling 42 active contracts, and keeping 15 employees paid. All my mother saw was her 32-year-old son, who couldn't even stand up straight without wincing, who needed help carrying anything over 20 pounds, Who was home all day like a ghost, haunting her perfect life? The comments started small. Little jabs when her friends asked about me. She'd say I was between jobs, or recovering still, 8 years after the accident. Then it got worse. She started calling me lazy to my relatives, saying I just played on the computer all day. She'd bring me lunch and sigh dramatically, asking when I planned to get my life together like Nathan. That morning, Nathan had visited for Mother's Day weekend. He sat at the breakfast table talking about making partners soon, about the vacation home he was buying on Cape Cod. My mother hung on every word. Then she turned to me and said those words that would change everything. "Why can't you be successful like your brother, instead of leeching off us?" I mentioned I had a doctor's appointment that afternoon for pain management, my monthly check to adjust medications. That's when she exploded. Years of resentment just poured out. She screamed that I was 32 years old and still living at home, that I was an embarrassment, that she was tired of taking care of a grown man who contributed nothing. My father just stood there, silent as always when she got like this. I looked at him, waiting for him to mention that I ran the entire financial side of his company. Nothing. He just stared at his coffee. So she threw my things in garbage bags, tossed them in the driveway, and told me to go leech off someone else. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just picked up my bags and left. As I settled into Marcus's spare room that night, my phone buzzed with a notification Nathan had posted on social media. Finally had the courage to confront a toxic family situation. Sometimes tough love is necessary. It had 47 likes, and dozens of comments from relatives praising his strength. That's when I realized this wasn't spontaneous. Nathan had orchestrated this. He'd convinced our mother to kick me out. But why? I opened my laptop and logged into the company email, and that's when I found it. An email thread between Nathan and someone named Peterson from Apex Construction. They were discussing the purchase of Hartley Construction. Nathan was secretly trying to sell our family business, and I was the only thing standing in his way. The next morning, I woke up in Marcus's spare room with a clear head for the first time in years. No morning lecture about being a burden, no dramatic sighs when I moved too slowly, no comparison to my successful siblings. Just quiet, and the sound of Marcus making coffee in the kitchen. I opened my laptop and began the methodical process of extracting myself from Hartley Construction. Not to destroy it, not out of revenge, just simply stopping everything I'd been doing for 8 years. The first step was changing my official address with every single institution from my parents' house to Marcus's apartment. The post office, the IRS, the state tax board, every bank, every vendor, every professional license. 73 address changes in total. Then I started mapping out exactly what I'd been handling. The list was staggering when I saw it all written out. I was the only one who knew the passwords to 17 different accounts. I was the only one who filed the quarterly tax returns, both federal and state. I managed payroll for 15 employees through ADP, a system my parents didn't even know we used. I maintained our contractor's license, our bond renewals, our insurance policies, 22 different vendor accounts, and relationships with 47 active clients. The most complex part was the banking. Hartley Construction operated through 3 different banks, something I'd set up for cash flow optimization. The main Wells Fargo account was the one my parents knew about, where they saw money coming in and out. But there was also a Chase account that held tax reserves, automatically setting aside 30% of every payment for quarterly obligations. And there was a regional bank account that handled bond requirements for government contracts, maintaining the minimum balances required by law. My name was on everything as Chief Financial Officer, a title my father had given me 5 years ago when the bank required it for a loan. He'd laughed about it at the time, calling it just paperwork. But legally, I had signing authority on every account, every contract, every financial instrument. I was Hartley Construction as far as the financial world was concerned. I started sending professional emails to our 5 biggest clients. These were people I'd built relationships with over 8 years. Tom at the hospital system, who always asked about my health. Jennifer at the school district, who sent me funny memes about accounting. David at the shopping center development, who invited me to his daughter's graduation, even though I couldn't attend. I told them I was taking a sabbatical for medical reasons and provided my personal cell phone for any consulting needs. I didn't tell them to leave Hartley Construction. I didn't badmouth my family. I just let them know I wouldn't be their point of contact anymore. The responses came quickly. Tom wrote back within an hour asking if everything was okay, saying he only trusted me with their $1 million annual contract. Jennifer called immediately, concerned, saying I was the only reason they kept renewing with Hartley instead of going with bigger firms. David sent a text saying whatever I decided to do next, he wanted to be my first client. 3 days into my stay at Marcus's place, Nathan called. Not to apologize, not to check if I was okay, but to demand I hand over all passwords immediately. His voice was cold, professional, like he was dealing with a hostile witness. Claude, this is ridiculous. You're holding the family business hostage. Give me the passwords, or Dad's going to have to get lawyers involved. I listened to him talk, really listened. Behind his threats, I heard something else. Nervousness. He kept mentioning his friend Bradley, who was a financial consultant, how Bradley could modernize everything, how Bradley had big plans for Hartley Construction. That's when Nathan made his mistake. He said, "Once we get you out of the way, Bradley can implement real professional systems. Get me out of the way, not help the business, not improve things. Get me out of the way." I hung up without saying a word and let his next 3 calls go to voicemail. Then I went back to the company email and dug deeper into Nathan's communications. What I found made my blood run cold. The emails with Peterson from Apex Construction went back 3 months. Nathan had been negotiating to sell Hartley Construction for $3 million, promising he could deliver it free and clear once I was removed from the picture. $3 million for a company doing $3 million in annual revenue, with $800,000 in equipment and a reputation built over 35 years. The business was worth at least $8 million, maybe 10 to the right buyer. But Nathan was getting a finder's fee of $500,000 for brokering the deal. He was selling out our parents' life work for a quick payday, and they had no idea. I took screenshots of everything, every email, every document, every communication. Nathan had been careful to use his personal email, but he'd made one mistake. He'd forwarded several threads to the company email to print them at the office. His plan was all there in black and white. Convince Mom to kick me out, claim I'd abandoned the business, use that as grounds to remove me as CFO, then push the sale through before our parents understood what was happening. The timeline in his emails was specific. He needed the sale done within 60 days, before the end of the fiscal quarter. He'd already promised Peterson that Hartley Construction would be available, that the current financial manager situation would be resolved by end of May. Today was May 3rd. I sat back in Marcus's desk chair and thought about my next move. I could have called my parents right then, shown them everything. But I knew my mother. She'd think I was making it up out of spite. She'd say I was trying to turn her against Nathan because I was jealous. No. I needed them to discover this on their own. I needed the truth to reveal itself naturally. So I continued my quiet exit. I removed myself from the company credit cards, knowing they'd stop working within days when the automatic payments I managed didn't process. I stopped the automated transfers between accounts that kept everything balanced. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I just stopped being the invisible hand that kept everything running. By the end of the week, I'd documented everything. 8 years of financial management, all organized into clear folders. Every tax return I'd filed, every contract I'd negotiated, every vendor relationship I'd maintained, every client I'd saved from walking away. The documentation filled 43 folders on my laptop, a complete record of how I'd saved Hartley Construction from bankruptcy and built it into something worth stealing. Marcus came home that evening with Chinese takeout. We sat at his kitchen table, and for the first time, I told him everything. About the accident, the years of pain, the thankless work, the constant humiliation of being called a leech while holding the entire business together. He listened without interrupting, then asked one question. "What's your endgame here, Claude?" I thought about it while picking at my orange chicken. I want them to see me, really see me. Not the broken son living at home, but the person who built their success. And I want Nathan exposed for what he really is. Marcus nodded. "And then what? You go back?" "No," I said, surprising myself with how certain I sounded. "I'm done being invisible. Whatever happens next, I'm done being the family secret. They either recognize my value, or they lose it forever." That night, I got 17 text messages. 3 from vendors wondering why their automatic payments hadn't processed. 5 from employees asking about direct deposit delays. 4 from clients looking for updates on their projects. And 5 from my father, growing increasingly panicked as he realized something was very wrong. I didn't respond to any of them. Let them figure it out. The Leech had left the building, and now they were about to discover just how much blood I'd been providing. Day 4 without me started with chaos. My phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was Barbara, screaming so loud that Marcus could hear her from across the room. The water had been shut off at the house. Also, the electricity was on a disconnect notice. And the company credit cards had all been declined when she tried to buy groceries. "What did you do?" she shrieked. "You vindictive little parasite! You sabotaged us!" I stayed calm. "I didn't do anything, Mom. That's the point. I stopped doing everything. There's a difference." She hung up on me, but called back 10 minutes later, this time with my father on speaker. Robert's voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. "Claude, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to fix this right now. We have payroll due tomorrow and the account is showing insufficient funds. The money is there, Dad. It's just in the tax reserve account at Chase. You know, the one I set up 5 years ago to make sure we never missed another quarterly payment? The routing number is in the files in the office. Check the folder labeled Banking Structure." "What folder? What files? Just tell me the password." "The password to what, Dad?" "The 17 different systems I managed? The ADP payroll system? The QuickBooks account? The vendor portals? The client databases? Which password do you want?" Silence. Then, quieter. "How did you do all of this?" "Every day for 8 years while Mom called me a leech." He hung up. By noon, the calls were coming from employees. Marcus let me use his home office while he was at work, and I sat there watching my phone light up with increasingly frantic messages. The project managers couldn't access the shared calendar that showed who was supposed to be where. The foreman couldn't find the permits for the Madison Street project. The office manager didn't know how to run payroll. Then Emma showed up. I hadn't expected to see my sister. She knocked on Marcus's door around 2 in the afternoon, looking tired and stressed. Her scrubs told me she'd come straight from the hospital. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I let her in and made her tea while she sat at Marcus's kitchen table. She looked around the small apartment, taking in my 2 garbage bags of belongings still sitting by the door, my laptop set up on a card table, the air mattress visible through the spare room door. "This is where you're living now? It's temporary. Marcus is a good friend." She nodded, wrapping her hands around the mug. "Claude, I need to tell you something. I came here to warn you, not to mediate. Yesterday, Nathan was at the house. I stopped by to pick up Mom's blood pressure medication. She forgot it when she visited last week. They didn't know I was there. I heard Nathan on the phone in Dad's office." She pulled out her phone and played a voice recording. Nathan's voice filled the kitchen. "Peterson, I told you I'd have it handled by the end of May. My idiot brother is out of the picture now. My parents are going to be desperate once they realize they can't run the finances themselves. I'll step in as the savior, get power of attorney to fix everything, and we can push the sale through. $3 million is agreed. My finder's fee of $500,000 goes to my Cayman account. Once I have control, I'll make sure the books look clean enough to pass due diligence." My stomach turned, but there was more. "The best part is, they'll thank me for it. They have no idea the company is worth $8 million minimum. They'll think $3 million is generous in this market. After the sale, I'll convince them they need professional management for their retirement funds. My buddy at the investment firm will put them in high-fee funds that'll generate nice commissions. Between that and selling their house, claiming they need something smaller, we're looking at another $2 million to play with." Emma stopped the recording. "There's more. 3 more calls over 2 days. He's planning to put Mom and Dad in Sunset Manor once he controls their assets." Sunset Manor. The cheapest retirement home in the county, known for bedbugs and citations from the state. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Because I've been a coward. I knew what you did for the business. I knew how Mom treated you. I watched it happen and said nothing because it was easier to be the successful daughter than to rock the boat. Nathan called me last week, trying to get me on board with his plan. He said you were holding the family back, that once you were gone, We could modernize everything, and I could get a bigger inheritance. She pulled out a tissue. I realized something when he was talking. He never once asked about your well-being. You're his brother. You got kicked out of your home, and all he cared about was passwords. That's when I started recording his calls. How many recordings do you have? 7. Including one where he laughs about you probably ending up homeless, saying it would serve you right for being a burden all these years. My hands clenched around my own mug. Even knowing Nathan's true nature, that hurt. Emma continued. Claude, the business is falling apart. Dad's trying to log into the bank, but he doesn't even know which bank holds which accounts. Mom's calling vendors, but they won't extend credit without your authorization. 3 major suppliers announced they're going cash only. The Madison Street project is stopped because no one can find the building permits. They're in the cloud folder labeled active permits. The password is in my desk drawer, in a notebook labeled system access. There is no notebook. Nathan went through your room and threw out everything, said it was all junk. Of course he did. Day 7 brought the catastrophe. The main business account at Wells Fargo was frozen. Not because I'd done anything to it, but because the quarterly tax payment had bounced. I'd always handled the IRS separately, keeping perfect records, making payments 3 days before they were due. Without me, no one had filed the required forms or transferred money from the tax reserve account. The IRS doesn't play games. They freeze first, ask questions later. Robert showed up at Marcus's door that evening, looking like he'd aged 5 years in a week. His usual confident stance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before: fear. The IRS froze our accounts, he said without preamble. We can't make payroll, we can't pay suppliers. We have $300,000 in checks about to bounce. The money exists, Dad. It's in the Chase tax reserve account. You need to file Form 941 for the quarterly employment tax, transfer the exact amount, then call the IRS to release the freeze. The account number is in the system. What system? Where? Claude, please just come back and fix this. Under what title, Dad? As the Leech, living off you? He flinched. Your mother didn't mean that. She meant every word. And you stood there and let her say it. Let her throw my belongings in the rain like I was garbage. I'll talk to her. I'll make her apologize. I don't want an apology. I want recognition. I want partnership. I want Nathan exposed for what he's trying to do. Did you know he's trying to sell the company to Apex Construction for $3 million? Robert's face went white. What? I pulled up the emails on my laptop, turned the screen toward him. He read them slowly, his hands starting to shake. Then he saw the part about Sunset Manor, about the high-fee investment funds, about selling the house. This can't be real. Nathan wouldn't. He's my son. So am I, Dad. But only one of us has been protecting you. He left with printed copies of the emails. That night, my phone rang 43 times. I didn't answer once. Week 2 started with an ambush. I was having morning coffee with Marcus when someone knocked on the door. Not knocked, pounded. Marcus looked through the peephole and mouthed trouble before opening it. Robert stood there with Nathan, and a man in an expensive suit who could only be a lawyer. Nathan's face was twisted with barely controlled rage, while the lawyer maintained that professional coldness they must teach in law school. We need to talk, Robert said, pushing past Marcus into the apartment. By all means, come in, Marcus said dryly, but they were already in his living room. The lawyer, who introduced himself as Bradley Steinberg, immediately launched into threats. Mr. Hartley, you're in possession of proprietary information belonging to Hartley Construction. You need to return all passwords, files, and access immediately, or will be forced to pursue criminal charges for theft of trade secrets. I actually laughed. Trade secrets? You mean the passwords I created? The systems I built? The relationships I maintained? Nathan jumped in. You were an employee. Everything you did belongs to the company. Interesting. Where's my employment contract? Where are my W-2 seconds? Where's any documentation that I was an employee? Silence. I pulled out a banker's box from under Marcus's coffee table. 8 years of documentation, all organized by year. Let me show you what I have instead. Here's the CFO designation Dad signed in 2017 for the Wells Fargo loan. Here's the power of attorney for financial matters from 2018. Here's the partnership agreement Dad drafted but never signed, promising me 30% of the company after 10 years of service. I pulled out more folders. Here's every tax return I filed, with my signature as Chief Financial Officer. Here's every major contract I negotiated, signed with my authority. Here's the corporate resolution naming me as the sole authorized user for all digital banking platforms. Bradley, the lawyer, was starting to sweat. Now let me show you something interesting, I continued, pulling out a printed spreadsheet. This is what I call the real books. Market rate for a CFO managing a $3 million construction company is between $150,000 and $200,000 per year. I've been paying myself $40,000. Over 8 years, that's a difference of over $1 million in unpaid wages. Nathan tried to interrupt. You lived at home rent-free, because I couldn't afford my own place on $40,000 a year, while paying for medical expenses from an injury I got at Dad's company. An injury, by the way, caused by faulty equipment that violated OSHA standards. Should I pull out those records too? Robert had been silent, but now he spoke up. What do you want, Claude? Before I could answer, Barbara burst through the door. She must have been waiting in the car. Her face was flushed, her carefully styled hair disheveled. She looked between all of us, then focused on me. You ungrateful little monster, you're destroying everything we built. Everything you built? Mom, when was the last time you looked at a financial statement? When was the last time you filed a tax return? When was the last time you even knew how much money was in the bank? That doesn't matter. We're your parents. We raised you. And then you threw me out like trash when Nathan convinced you I was worthless. Nathan's head snapped toward me. What are you talking about? Emma walked in. Nobody had heard her coming up the stairs, but there she stood in the doorway, laptop under her arm. Perfect timing. Everyone's here for the show. She set up her laptop on Marcus's kitchen table and started playing the recordings. Nathan's voice filled the apartment, talking to Peterson about the sale, discussing the finder's fee, planning to manipulate our parents into signing over power of attorney, the Sunset Manor plan, everything. The room was dead silent, except for Nathan's recorded voice, explaining how stupid our father was, how emotional and easily manipulated our mother was, how Emma was too self-absorbed with her perfect family to notice, and how I was just a pathetic cripple who should have been put in a group home years ago. Barbara's face crumbled. Robert's hands clenched into fists. But Emma wasn't done. She played the next recording, where Nathan discussed liquidating our parents' assets. The old man has a classic '67 Mustang he thinks is worth something. Maybe 20 grand at auction. Barbara has her mother's jewelry, probably another 30 grand. The house is worth 450, maybe 500,000 if we stage it right. Tell them they need a smaller place for retirement, somewhere easier to maintain. They'll buy it. Then came the worst part. Nathan's laugh as he described me. 8 years living like a parasite, and he actually thinks he was helping. The idiot doesn't realize I've been planning this for 3 years. Getting Mom to turn against him was easy. Just had to remind her every visit how embarrassing it was to have a grown son living at home. Plant the seeds, water them with disappointment, and watch them grow. The best part? He'll probably thank me if I toss him a couple thousand in guilt money after the sale. The recording ended. Nathan's face had gone from red to white to green. The lawyer, Bradley, was slowly backing toward the door. That's taken out of context, Nathan stammered. Which part? Emma asked. The part where you called Dad stupid? The part where you're stealing the company? Or the part where you've been manipulating Mom for 3 years? Barbara turned to Nathan, tears streaming down her face. 3 years? You've been planning this for 3 years? Nathan tried to recover. Mom, I was trying to help. Claude was holding the company back. We need modern management, real systems. Robert finally exploded. Real systems? The company runs on Claude's systems. We haven't missed a payment in 8 years. We haven't had a tax issue in 8 years. We've grown 40% because of Claude's systems. You don't understand, Nathan said desperately. The company could be worth so much more with proper management. It's worth $8 million, Robert shouted. Claude showed me the comparables. You were selling our life's work for $3 million so you could pocket $500,000. The lawyer Bradley cleared his throat. I think I should mention that Mr. Nathan Hartley owes my firm approximately $80,000 in legal fees. He assured us payment would come from the company's sale. If that sale doesn't happen, we'll be forced to pursue collection actions. Nathan turned on him. You're my lawyer. You can't reveal that. Actually, I'm not. You never signed our engagement letter, and your retainer check bounced. I'm here as a courtesy, but this courtesy is ending now. Bradley left, pulling out his phone as he walked down the stairs. The room erupted. Barbara was sobbing. Robert was yelling. Nathan was trying to defend himself, and Emma was calmly documenting everything on her phone. Marcus stood in his kitchen doorway, watching the family drama unfold in his living room with the expression of someone watching a particularly intense reality show. Finally, I stood up. Everyone stopped talking. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Dad, you're going to make me a full partner. 40% ownership, documented and filed with the state. Nathan is banned from any involvement in the company, permanently. Mom, you're going to call every single relative you've badmouthed me to and tell them the truth. The whole truth. That's blackmail, Nathan shouted. No, it's negotiation. Because here's the thing, Nathan. What you did might be criminal conspiracy, fraud, attempted elder abuse. I'm sure the district attorney would be very interested in those recordings, especially the part about manipulating Mom and Dad into signing over power of attorney. Nathan's lawyer brain finally kicked in. He realized he was in actual legal jeopardy. You can't prove anything. Emma smiled. Actually, we can. I've been recording this entire conversation too. You just admitted to planning this for 3 years. Nathan looked around the room, realized he had no allies left, and made one last desperate play. Fine. But I want my share of the company. I'm entitled to inheritance. Robert stood up, walked over to Nathan, and said very quietly, You're entitled to nothing. You're not my son anymore. Get out. Nathan left, but not before trying one more manipulation. Mom, please. I'm your baby boy. Barbara looked at him with eyes I'd never seen before. Hard, cold, clear. My baby boy died the moment he called Claude a pathetic cripple. Get out of my sight. After Nathan left, we sat in Marcus's living room in shell-shocked silence. The aftermath of truth has a particular quality to it, like the air after a thunderstorm. Everything feels different, cleaner but also raw. Barbara was the first to speak, her voice hoarse from crying. Claude, I need to say something. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Let me finish. She took a shaky breath. When you fell, when the accident happened, I blamed myself. We knew that scaffolding was bad. Robert had mentioned it needed replacing. But I told him to wait until after the Madison project was done, said we needed the money for Emma's wedding. If we'd fixed it when we should have, you never would have fallen. This was news to me. I looked at Robert, who nodded slowly. Barbara continued. Every time I looked at you, in pain, struggling to walk, I saw my failure as a mother. It was easier to be angry at you than to live with that guilt. So I convinced myself you were choosing to be dependent, that you were milking the injury. If you were just lazy, then I wasn't responsible for breaking my son. Mom. I called you a leech because I couldn't call myself what I really was. A coward who nearly killed her child over money. The room was silent, except for Barbara's quiet sobs. Emma reached over and took her hand. Robert cleared his throat. We need to fix this. All of it. Claude, what you asked for, the 40% partnership, it's yours. But I want to go further. You should be CEO. I'll be president of operations, handle the field work. You run the business side completely. I have conditions, I said. First, I work remotely. I'm getting my own office space, properly set up for my needs. Second, Emma joins the company. She wants to create a workplace safety division, and after what happened to me, we need it. Emma looked surprised. You want me in the company? You're the only one who stood up when it mattered. Plus, your medical knowledge could help us get government contracts with better safety standards. What about Nathan? Barbara asked. Nathan is done. Permanently banned from any involvement with Hartley Construction. If he comes near the business, we file a restraining order. He's still my son, Barbara said quietly. And I'm still your son too. You chose him for 32 years. Now you need to choose me. She nodded, understanding the weight of that choice. We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. I showed them how to access the basic systems, though it was clear they'd need training. The company was hemorrhaging money every day. I wasn't managing it. 3 contracts were in breach, 2 major bids were due this week, and payroll was now 5 days late. I'll stabilize things, I said. But from my own space. Marcus, is it okay if I work from here for another week while I set up an office? Marcus, who'd been quietly making sandwiches during our family drama, nodded. Stay as long as you need. This is better than cable. That evening, I made phone calls. First to Tom at the hospital system. Claude! Thank God. What is happening over there? We've been trying to process payment for 2 weeks, and no one returns our calls. Family medical emergency, Tom. It's resolved now. I'll have everything sorted by tomorrow. Can we keep the contract intact? If it's you handling it, absolutely. But Claude, I need to be honest. We were about to walk. We had Apex Construction ready to take over. Apex. Nathan's buyers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I made similar calls to our other major clients. Jennifer at the school district was relieved to hear from me. David at the shopping center development offered me a job on the spot with his company. Each conversation ended the same way. They'd stay with Hartley, but only if I was their contact. The next morning, I went to the bank with Robert to unfreeze the accounts. The IRS had added penalties and interest, but nothing we couldn't handle once I explained the situation. The agent on the phone actually laughed when I told her the short version. Let me guess, she said. Family business. You do all the work, they don't appreciate it until you're gone? Something like that. Happens more than you'd think. We'll waive the penalties this once, given the circumstances. But Mr. Hartley, don't let this happen again. While I was handling the IRS, Emma was handling something else entirely. She'd gone to Nathan's law firm with the recordings. Not to hurt him, but to protect our parents. If Nathan was capable of defrauding them, what was he doing to his clients? The answer came 2 days later. Nathan was suspended pending investigation. Turns out, the firm had been getting complaints about billing irregularities for months. Nathan had been padding his hours, billing clients for time he spent scheming about the family business. The recordings Emma provided were evidence of a pattern of deception. By the end of the week, Nathan was facing disbarment proceedings. The state bar takes financial fraud seriously, especially when it involves potential elder abuse. He tried calling our parents, begging for them to intervene, but Barbara had finally found her spine. You made your choices, she told him over the phone while I was there. You chose greed over family. You chose to hurt your brother who was holding us all together. Now, you face the consequences. I found my office space on day 10. It was a converted warehouse in the Arts District, already built out with accessible bathrooms, wide doorways, and even a freight elevator. The previous tenant had been a design firm that went fully remote. The space was perfect. Exposed brick, huge windows, polished concrete floors that my wheelchair could easily navigate when I needed it on bad pain days. This is it, I told Robert and Barbara when I showed them. This is where I'll run Hartley Construction's financial operations. Barbara looked around, taking in the professional space, the standing desk setup, the ergonomic everything. This is what you needed all along. Your own space. Respect. I needed to be seen, Mom, not as the broken son living at home, but as the professional keeping your business alive. She nodded, tears in her eyes again. She'd been crying a lot lately, but these weren't tears of anger or frustration. They were tears of recognition, of finally seeing what had been in front of her for 8 years. That afternoon we signed the partnership papers. I was now officially 40% owner of Hartley Construction, with the title of Chief Executive Officer. Robert retained 40% as President of Operations. Barbara kept 20% as Director of Customer Relations, a role that actually suited her perfectly once she wasn't trying to manage finances. Emma joined us the next week as Chief Safety Officer, bringing with her a decade of medical knowledge and a passion for preventing injuries like mine. Her first act was to inspect every piece of equipment we owned, condemning anything that didn't meet standards. It cost us $30,000 to replace everything, but it was $30,000 that should have been spent 8 years ago. The turnaround was swift once I was back in control. Within 2 weeks, all contracts were current. All bills paid, all clients happy. But now, instead of hiding in my childhood bedroom, I was working from my professional office, with proper equipment and the respect of everyone who walked through the door. Nathan made one last attempt at reconciliation. He showed up at my office 3 weeks after everything exploded, looking haggard and desperate. He'd lost his job, his reputation, and was facing potential criminal charges for the attempted fraud. Claude, please. I'm your brother. No, I said simply. Brothers don't do what you did. Brothers don't spend 3 years plotting to destroy each other. Brothers don't call each other pathetic cripples. I was wrong. I see that now. I was jealous. Jealous? Of what? The chronic pain? The 8 years of being called a leech? The invisibility? Jealous that despite everything, you never broke. You just kept working, kept building, kept holding everyone together. I have a law degree from Harvard, and I was jealous of my brother with a state school finance degree because you were stronger than I could ever be. I looked at him for a long moment. Nathan, you need help. Real, psychological help. This isn't about jealousy. This is about something broken inside you that made you capable of planning to destroy your own parents. I can't fix that. I can't forgive that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He left without another word. It was the last time I saw him for 6 months. Week 3 after the explosion brought unexpected opportunity. Thomas Peterson from Apex Construction called me directly. Not the company, me personally. Claude, I need to be straight with you. Your brother approached us 3 months ago with a proposal to buy Hartley Construction. We were interested until we did our research and realized the only thing holding that company together was you. I appreciate that, Thomas. No, you don't understand. We've been watching Hartley for 2 years. Every successful bid, every completed project, every satisfied client, they all had one thing in common: your signature on the paperwork. Your brother tried to sell us a company, but what we really wanted was you. I'm not looking to leave Hartley, Thomas. I'm not asking you to. I'm proposing a joint venture. Apex has the manpower for a $50 million federal contract we're bidding on, but we need someone who understands the financial complexities. Partner with us on this one project. Hartley provides the financial management and safety protocols. We provide the labor and equipment. 60-40 split in our favor, but that's still $20 million for Hartley. $20 million. More than 5 years of our current revenue in one project. I need to discuss it with my partners, I said. Of course. But Claude, this offer is contingent on you personally managing the financial side. No offense to your father, but we need someone who understands modern systems. That evening, I presented the opportunity to Robert, Barbara, and Emma at our new weekly leadership meeting, held in my office instead of the kitchen table where decisions used to be made. Robert's immediate reaction was fear. 20 million? That's too big. We can't handle that. Actually, we can, Emma said, surprising everyone. With proper safety protocols and Claude's financial systems, size is just a scaling issue. The real question is whether we want to grow. What do you think, Claude? Barbara asked, and the fact that she was asking my opinion first was still new enough to be notable. I think this is what we've been building toward, without realizing it. Every system I put in place, every efficiency I created, it was all preparing us for something bigger. We take this project, prove we can handle it, and Hartley Construction becomes a major player instead of a regional contractor. But what if we fail? Robert asked. Then we fail attempting something great instead of succeeding at something small. But Dad, I don't think we'll fail. Not with Emma's safety protocols, your field experience, Mom's client relations, and my financial management. We're not the family business that almost collapsed 3 weeks ago. We're something new now. The vote was unanimous. We would partner with Apex. The announcement had immediate ripple effects. Our employees, who'd been nervous about the company's stability after the recent chaos, suddenly saw a future bigger than they'd imagined. Our suppliers started offering better terms, wanting to lock in the relationship before we got too big to need them. Our competitors started calling, some with partnership offers, others trying to poach our people. But the biggest change was in how we operated as a family and a business. The dysfunction that had nearly destroyed us was replaced with something healthier. We had clear roles, clear boundaries, and clear communication. Barbara threw herself into her new role with surprising effectiveness. She'd always been good with people when she wasn't twisted up in guilt and resentment. Now, freed from the financial responsibilities she'd never understood, she became our secret weapon in client relations. She organized site visits for client executives, showing them exactly how their projects were progressing. She remembered birthdays, anniversaries, Kids' names. She turned construction management from a business transaction into a relationship. Emma's safety division was revolutionary for a company our size. She implemented mandatory stretching sessions before shifts, ergonomic assessments for all positions, and regular health screenings for employees. Our injury rate dropped to 0 within 2 months. OSHA took notice, featuring us in their newsletter as a model for small construction companies. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Nathan's absence left wounds that were still healing. Barbara would sometimes stare at his photo on her phone. Robert threw himself into work to avoid thinking about his son. The extended family was divided, some supporting Nathan, others appalled by what he'd tried to do. Then came the call that changed everything. It was from Adult Protective Services. Nathan, in a last desperate attempt to regain control, had filed a complaint alleging that I was financially abusing my elderly parents. The investigator, a tired-looking woman named Janet, came to my office with a thick file. "Mr. Hartley, we're required to investigate all complaints. Your brother has alleged that you've taken control of your parents' finances against their will." I laughed, actually laughed. "Would you like to see 8 years of records showing how I've managed their finances with their full consent? Or would you prefer to speak with them directly?" "Both, actually." The investigation was thorough, but brief. My records were impeccable. Every transaction documented, every decision tracked. Robert and Barbara were interviewed separately, and both told the same story. I'd saved their business and their retirement while Nathan had tried to steal everything. But the investigation revealed something else. In going through Nathan's finances, they discovered he'd been stealing from his law firm for over a year. Small amounts at first, then larger ones as his scheme against the family progressed. He needed money to maintain his lifestyle, while setting up the family betrayal. The State Bar Association was notified. Criminal charges were filed. Nathan was disbarred and faced up to 5 years in prison for embezzlement. The golden child had fallen farther than anyone could have imagined. That night, Barbara asked me to drive her to Nathan's apartment. He was on house arrest awaiting trial. She needed to see him one last time. I waited in the car while she went up. She was gone for an hour. When she came back, her face was streaked with tears, but somehow clearer than I'd seen it in years. "He's sick, Claude. Something in him is broken." He admitted everything. The jealousy, the planning, even things I didn't know about. He's been in therapy since the bar suspended him. His therapist thinks he has narcissistic personality disorder. He can't truly empathize with others. Everyone is just a tool for his success or an obstacle to remove. "What did you tell him?" "That I love him, but I can't have him in my life until he gets help. Real help. And even then, forgiveness isn't guaranteed. Some things break too badly to ever fully repair." We drove home in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of understanding, of finally seeing things clearly. The federal project with Apex started 2 months later. The learning curve was steep, but we were ready. Emma's safety protocols meant 0 injuries on a project that statistically should have had dozen. My financial management kept everything on budget despite material cost fluctuations. Robert's field experience caught problems before they became disasters. Barbara's client relations had the federal inspectors actually enjoying their site visits. We were 4 months into the project when I got an unexpected visitor. Thomas Peterson himself came to my office, but not about the current project. "Claude, what you've built here is remarkable. Not the business, the transformation. 3 months ago, Hartley was a family company destroying itself. Now you're our most reliable partner. We had good motivation to change. No, you had good leadership. You could have destroyed them when they cast you out. Instead, you let them discover the truth and then helped them rebuild. That takes a kind of strength I rarely see. What are you really here for, Thomas?" He smiled. "I'm retiring in 5 years. Apex needs leadership that understands both the financial and human sides of this business. I'm not offering you a job. I'm offering you a future. Think about it." After he left, I sat in my office watching the sunset through those huge warehouse windows. 6 months ago, I was a leech living in my childhood bedroom. Now I was being courted to potentially run one of the largest construction companies in the state. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. He was in minimum security prison now, serving 18 months for embezzlement. The message was simple: "Thank you for not pressing charges on the family matter." I'm getting help. Real help. Maybe someday I can earn the right to apologize properly. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Some bridges take time to rebuild, and some never get rebuilt at all. That's okay. Not everything broken needs to be fixed. Emma knocked on my door. Family dinner tonight. Mom's making her pot roast. You coming? Yeah, I'll be there. As I locked up my office, I realized something. The pain in my back was still there. Would always be there. But for the first time in 8 years, it didn't define me. I wasn't the broken son living at home. I wasn't the Leech. I was Claude Hartley, CEO, and I'd earned every bit of that title. 6 months after everything exploded, Hartley Family Construction celebrated its 40th anniversary. But this wasn't the small family business my father had started with a pickup truck and a tool belt. We were now a $12 million company with 40 employees, federal contracts, and a reputation as the safest mid-sized construction firm in the state. The anniversary party was held at the Riverside Pavilion, a venue we'd actually helped build 3 years earlier. I watched from my table as employees, clients, suppliers, and competitors mingled. Everyone wanting to know the secret of our transformation. Robert gave the opening speech, standing at the podium in his best suit, the one Barbara had insisted he buy now that we were proper executives. His hands shook slightly as he held his notes, but his voice was strong. 40 years ago, I started this company with nothing but determination and a willingness to work. I thought I knew what success looked like. More contracts, more money, more growth. But I learned something this year. Real success isn't what you build with your hands. It's who stands with you when everything falls apart. He looked directly at me. My son Claude saved this company. Not just financially, though he did that too. He saved us from becoming another cautionary tale of family business failure. When we pushed him away, called him terrible things, treated him as less than he was, he could have let us crash and burn. Instead, he let us discover the truth and then helped us rebuild from the ashes. He paused, visibly emotional. Claude fell from scaffolding 8 years ago because I was too cheap to fix faulty equipment. He broke his back, but not his spirit. While dealing with constant pain, he built the systems that made us successful. While we called him a burden, he carried us all. I'm not just proud to call him my business partner, I'm proud to call him my son. The room erupted in applause. Tom from the hospital system stood up, starting a standing ovation. Jennifer from the school district was wiping tears. Even Thomas Peterson from Apex was clapping enthusiastically. Emma took the podium next, talking about the safety division and how we'd gone 400 days without a single injury. She presented me with a framed photo, our entire crew at the federal project site, wearing shirts that said, "Zero injuries, infinite possibilities." Barbara spoke last, and her transformation was the most remarkable. The bitter woman who'd screamed at me in the rain was gone, replaced by someone who'd found purpose in helping others. Many of you know about the Hartley Foundation for Injured Workers that we started 3 months ago, she began. What you might not know is why. My son Claude was injured because of our negligence. For 8 years, I blamed him for the consequences of our failure. I called him horrible names, treated him as a burden, when he was actually our salvation. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. The foundation has already helped 15 construction workers navigate injury claims, manage their finances during recovery, and maintain their dignity when the world tells them they're worthless. Every person we help is my apology to Claude. Every family we keep together is my promise to never again mistake limitation for weakness. After the speeches, I was overwhelmed with conversations. Clients wanted to know our availability for new projects. Competitors wanted to discuss partnerships. 3 different companies tried to poach Emma for their safety programs. But the conversation that mattered most came from an unexpected source. A young man approached me, walking with a cane, moving carefully in a way I recognized immediately. Another person managing chronic pain. "Mr. Hartley, I'm James Chen. I was injured on a construction site 2 years ago. Fall from a roof, spine damage. My company fired me the day I got out of the hospital. The Hartley Foundation helped me keep my house, get proper treatment, and fight for my workers' compensation. I just wanted to thank you." "You don't need to thank me, James." "Yes, I do. But more than that, I wanted to tell you something. I'm starting community college next month, financial management. If someone with a broken back can run a multi-million-dollar company, maybe I can too. After he walked away, Emma appeared at my elbow. You know you're inspiring people, right? I'm just doing my job. No, Claude. You're showing people that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. That's worth more than any construction contract. The federal project with Apex wrapped up 2 months later, on time and under budget. Our profit share came to $22 million, more than we'd initially projected. Thomas Peterson made his offer official. When he retired in 3 years, he wanted me to take over as CEO of Apex, with Hartley Construction becoming a subsidiary. I turned him down. Hartley Construction is my family's legacy, I told him. I'm not leaving it behind. But I'll counter-propose. Merge the companies as equals. Apex. Hartley Incorporated. You run operations for 3 years while training Robert as your successor. I handle all financial management for both companies. Emma's safety division covers everything. Barbara manages client relations across the board. Thomas laughed. You know that would make you CFO of a $100 million company, right? I'm aware. I'm also aware that you need me more than I need you. Your financials are a mess, your safety record is mediocre, and your client retention is dropping. We can fix all of that. The merger was announced 3 months later. The business press called it the deal of the year, a perfect example of how family businesses could evolve and thrive. What they didn't know was the personal cost and triumph behind it. Nathan was released from prison around that time. He'd served his full sentence, using the time to complete intensive therapy and earn certifications in addiction counseling, even though addiction wasn't his issue. He'd simply needed to understand how people could lose themselves so completely to destructive impulses. He wrote me a letter, not asking for forgiveness but offering acknowledgement. Claude, I spent 30 years believing success meant being better than everyone else, especially you. I convinced myself you were weak because you were injured, dependent because you lived at home, worthless because you weren't visibly achieving. The truth is, I was the weak one. Too weak to see past my own ego, too dependent on external validation, too worthless to recognize real strength when it was right in front of me. You held our family together while I plotted to tear it apart. You built something real while I constructed facades. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand. The leech was never you. It was me, feeding off the family's love while contributing nothing but poison. Your success is earned. My failure is deserved. I'm working now at a legal aid clinic, helping injured workers navigate claims. It pays almost nothing. But for the first time in my life, I'm actually helping people. Maybe someday I'll earn the right to be your brother again. Maybe not. Either way, thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. I kept the letter but didn't respond. Some wounds heal with time, others leave permanent scars. Both are okay. The anniversary of my exile came on a rainy Thursday, exactly 1 year after Barbara threw my bags in the driveway. I was in my office, reviewing contracts for a new $100 million project, when she knocked on my door. Can I come in? She sat in the ergonomic chair across from my desk, looking at her hands. 1 year ago today, I threw my son out in the rain because I couldn't face my own guilt. It was the worst day of my life, and the best thing that ever happened to our family. Mom, let me finish. The Chinese have a phrase, crisis contains opportunity. Our crisis revealed who we really were. Nathan, the golden child, was actually tarnished brass. You, the supposed leech, were actually the foundation. And Robert and I were fools who nearly lost everything because we couldn't see past our own prejudices. She pulled out a small wrapped box. Inside was a key on a silver chain. What's this? The key to your new house, the one Robert and I bought for you, fully accessible, near your office, with a therapy pool for your back. It's not an apology, we could never adequately apologize. It's a recognition. You were never a leech, Claude. You were the lifeblood, and we nearly bled out when we cut you off. I held the key, feeling its weight. I don't need a house to know you finally see me, Mom. No, but you deserve one. You deserved so much more than we gave you. Let us give you this. That evening was the family dinner that marked our new beginning. Robert grilled steaks in the backyard of my new house, while Emma's kids played in the pool. Barbara fussed over the table settings, wanting everything perfect. Marcus came by with his new girlfriend, joking that he wanted his spare room back. As we sat around the table, Robert raised his beer, a toast, to the Leech who saved us all. Everyone laughed, even me. The word that had once cut so deep had become something else. A reminder of how wrong people can be, about value, about worth, about strength. Emma's daughter, 7-year-old Sophie, tugged on my sleeve. "Uncle Claude, why does Grandpa call you a leech?" "Leeches are gross." I smiled at her. "Sometimes, Sophie, people use mean words when they're scared or confused. The word says more about them than about the person they're calling names. So, you're not really a leech?" "No, sweetie. I'm just someone who learned that your worth isn't determined by what others call you, but by what you build when no one's watching." Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my new deck, looking at the stars. My back hurt, as it always did by evening, but the pain felt different now. It wasn't the defining feature of my existence anymore. It was just part of my story, the catalyst that revealed everyone's true nature, including my own. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. The message was simple. "Saw the news about the merger. Proud of you." It was from Nathan. I still didn't respond, but this time I saved the number. Maybe someday. Maybe not. Time would tell. The next morning brought a new challenge, a new opportunity, a new chance to prove that strength isn't measured in what you can lift, but in what you can endure, overcome, and build. Hartley Construction, now Apex Hartley Incorporated, had 300 employees depending on us. Families who needed their paychecks, injured workers who needed support, clients who needed their projects completed safely and on time. I thought about James Chen, starting college with a broken back and renewed hope. I thought about the 15 workers our foundation had helped. I thought about Sophie, learning that words only have the power we give them. I thought about Barbara, transformed from bitter to purposeful. About Robert, finally seeing his son's true strength. About Emma, finding her calling in protecting others from what happened to me. And I thought about Nathan, sitting in a legal aid clinic, finally helping instead of taking. Even broken things can be repurposed, even if they can never be fully repaired. Looking back, being called a leech was the best worst thing that ever happened to me. It forced me out of the shadows, into the light where everyone could finally see what I'd been doing all along. It revealed the truth about everyone in my family, stripping away the facades we'd all been maintaining. The company that almost collapsed is now thriving. The family that almost shattered is stronger, if smaller. The son who was called worthless is now worth millions, not just in money but in respect, in purpose, in proof that invisible contributions are often the most vital ones. Your worth isn't determined by what others call you. It's determined by what you build when no one's watching, what you endure when everyone's judging, and what you become when you finally step out of the shadows. Sometimes being pushed out is really being pushed forward. Sometimes the worst thing someone says about you becomes the catalyst for showing them exactly how wrong they were. Never let anyone's labels define your reality. Build your value so solidly that your absence speaks louder than any argument ever could. The greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's showing everyone exactly what they lost when they pushed you away. And sometimes, just sometimes, the leech turns out to be the lifeblood all along. So to everyone listening who's ever been called worthless, who's ever been dismissed as a burden, who's ever been told they contribute nothing, keep building in the shadows. Keep working when no one's watching. Keep believing in your value even when no one else does. Because one day, when they finally need what you've been providing all along, your absence will teach them a lesson that your presence never could. And when that day comes, you'll have a choice. You can let them crash and burn, or you can help them rebuild. Either choice is valid. But if you choose to help, make sure it's on your terms, with your value recognized and your worth never questioned again. The rain that soaked my bags that terrible day led to the clearest skies of my life. Sometimes you need the storm to appreciate the sunshine. Sometimes you need to be called a leech to discover you were always the lifeblood. And sometimes the best thing that can happen is the worst thing you never saw coming. What about you? Have you ever been dismissed as worthless, only to prove everyone wrong? Have you been the invisible force holding everything together while others got the credit? Share your story in the comments below. Because every person who's been called a burden needs to hear that they're not alone. Hit that like button if you believe that true strength isn't always visible. Subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over dismissal, and share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' opinions. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the ones they call leeches are often the ones keeping everyone else alive. Keep building, keep believing, and keep proving them wrong.